Hi, my name is Jeff Allen, and I'm the pipeline industry lead here at Esri. A number of customers have shown an interest in how we perform some of the advanced labeling that we do within our pipeline demos. So today I want to show you a quick video on how we leverage Arcade to represent engineering stationing along the values of the pipeline center line. So first, what's this Arcade? Well, Arcade is a light, portable expression language written for the ArcGIS platform. Like other expression languages, it can perform mathematical calculations, manipulate text, and even do logical statements. Arcade was designed specifically for creating custom visualizations and labeling expressions within the ArcGIS platform. It allows you to write, share, and customize expressions for both ArcGIS Pro, Runtime, ArcGIS Online, and the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. So really portable. I can use it, write it once, use it all across the platform. So it allows me to really centralize some of this advanced labeling and then share it across all the different apps and visualizations that I use it for. So what is this engineering stationing for you guys that might not be familiar with some of this pipeline terminology? Well, a station is really used to define a position along a man-made structure, in this case a pipeline. So we typically use stationing in large linear projects like highways, railroads, in our case pipelines, to describe the locations of objects along a particular route. In our case, we're going to use engineering stationing, and one station equals 100 feet. So when we ask how many stations are in a mile, or 5,280 feet, we simply divide 5280 by 100, and we come up with 52.8 stations. So that would be shown on a map as 52 plus 80, right? That's standard nomenclature. So first here, I'm just going to show you where you can find some resources on these Arcade language scripting. So here's a URL to this web page. It's got a lot of great information. It's got a playground where you can practice writing Arcade scripts. It's got a guide and a function reference. This is where I go to really kind of figure out when I'm writing these expressions, how to construct them and how they work. So lots of information here. I won't dive into the Arcade expression deeply, but you can go online. There's lots of videos that will show you how to do this. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and switch over to my Pro desktop. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, here's my typical Pro project. This is where I've got my pipeline center lines and all my objects that occur along those center lines. And these objects all have engineering stationing measures associated with them. So what I'm going to do is I've just pulled a couple of these layers out and put them in their own map so I can show you this example. So here what I've done is I've just brought through my measured polyline, which is my engineering stationing network, and I've got 2 copies of my calibration point layer. So let me just zoom in on a particular area, get some more details. I'll zoom in on this this location where I have a pump station. We can switch on the base map really quickly. You'll see this is my pipeline, comes into the station. There's a launcher receiver assembly and come back out the other side. Now this pipeline itself, if I select it, let's highlight the engineering network. If I select this pipeline itself and look at its attributes, you can see all the sort of business attributes about this line itself. But if I look at the geometry behind it, you'll see this is a measured polyline. So this now has the length or the measures of the steel that's in the ground along as its X, Y, Z positioning along that line. And when we use the ArcGIS pipeline referencing tools, what happens is we represent a series of points we call calibration points. And these calibration points is really where we define, a known location along the pipeline and that engineering measure value. So we can see we begin this pipeline at 0, and this vertex right here represents 267 feet down from the beginning of this pipeline. And so in this simple example, if we look at the labeling here, I'm just labeling based on the measure of that point. But this doesn't really represent it like I would normally see it from an engineering stationing perspective. So I have this sort of more complex view where I now add that engineering plus signal in here, go to the first decimal point. I use a little leader line to bring these away from the points. When it gets congested, it's a little easier to see. If I zoom in, you'll see all these points have their engineering stationing measures. So really, it's this formatting of this decimal measure value to be represented as the engineering station that I use the Arcade script for. And so if I just click on this advanced one, you can see that the instead of picking on the measure field, if we look on a simple example, my labeling field is the measure field. Here for my engineering, the more advanced version, I've got an expression. And if I open up this expression, I've selected the Arcade language as my type. And then I have my little Arcade expression here that I've written and put into this box. And this is really what where I'm using that Arcade to represent that that Station Plus. And if we take a quick peek at what that looks like from a code perspective, here's a little bit of code. And I'll share this. I'll download link so you can grab this off our website and play around with it. But basically, I wrote this pretty simply. Just takes the feature's measure value, which is a decimal, figures out if it's positive or negative because I want to preserve that negative value. I also have a little variable here that allows me to do this in either feet or meters. In the meters example, every 1,000 meters is a station versus every 100 feet. So slightly different format. But then what I do is I just use the Arcade scripting language to format the text to the right-hand side of the plus, which is here. I have two, one for feet, one for meters. And then I do the same thing with the left-hand side. So this kind of takes that numeric value of the station, splits it into its left and right components, and then basically concatenates them back together, sees if that value is negative, and if it is, it adds a negative sign to the front, and then returns that station label. So you can kind of go and explore these different functions and see how they work by looking them up in the Arcade expression language. But basically what I do is I just highlight this text, I just copy it, and then if I go back over to my Pro, I just basically paste it in this window here, and that's how I get that Station Plus from that measure value. So you can see it's grabbing the feature measure value. And that's pretty easy, and I can label all those things, but what it doesn't really give me is anywhere along the engineering stationing or the polyline where I might want to label as well. So you can see in this example, I've got some pretty good gaps here, where I don't have any calibration points, where it might be handy to know the engineering station value. So this is where I've used some of the advanced labeling inside of ArcGIS Pro to use that same Arcade expression to do some interesting stuff with the polyline itself. So I'm going to go ahead and shut these point layers off. And now we're just going to focus on that measured polyline. Remember where I clicked on it, looked at the attributes, you see that this polyline has an M value associated with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this, right click on it, and go into the symbology for this particular polyline layer. Now, one of the things I want to do is I actually want to link some of my symbology to the underlying attribute data. And really what I'm after is that measure value of that polyline. So this second option here says vary symbol by attribute. If I click on this is kind of important. You want to check this box off. And what this allows me to do is connect to the attributes of this polyline as I'm formatting my symbology. So check that on. I'll show you how that plays into in a second. So I go back here now to the symbol itself. I'll double click on that. And there's a couple things I want to do. So in this particular case, what I want to do is I want to label every, say, 500 feet along this polyline with its measure value. And I also want to label every vertice, regardless if it has a calibration point or not. So I'm going to add a couple of symbol layers to this polyline. So I'll go ahead and just click on this add symbol layer, and I'm going to select a new marker symbol layer. And if I go back to the properties now and I click on that, You can see I have a couple of different options. In this case, what I want to do is I'm going to use this symbol layer that has a symbol and some text associated with it. So I'll click on that and I'll just apply that. So you can see this little symbol allows me to have symbology along the center line with a given text value associated with it. Now, if I go down to the marker placement, instead of just simply placing it along the line, I'm going to place it at a measured unit. Okay, so this is where I'm going to control where those little ticks occur. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and label every 500 feet. So if I go ahead and apply that, you can see now they're nice and spaced out. So now I'll have this tick box and a measure every 500 feet. And if I just go back up here to the appearance, let's take a look at the, in this particular case, we've got two elements. We've got the actual symbol itself for the tick and the station value. So first I'll symbolize the little tick here. Let's give that a little blue color. And go ahead and apply that. So there's give a little blue tick across the center line. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually format that text. And this is where that original little checkbox comes into play, because now instead of having a static text string, what I do is I have this little ability to link that text to an attribute coming from the line itself. So here I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on this set expression box, which again gives me this little arcade window. I'm going to go ahead and drop my little expression right into here. Just grab it from my code window and paste it right into here. So I pasted that text into here. Now the only other trick here is when I'm dealing with a polyline object, instead of having an actual measure field, right, I'm pulling from that measure geometry of the underlying polyline. So here all you have to do is just change that input variable. Instead of being the feature.measure, it's the measure of the polyline itself. And if you want to just check that, you can hit this verification, and that text is verified. And if we get OK now and apply that, now you can see I've got that nice 5 + 0, 0. So that's 500 feet now from the beginning of the line stationed along it. This last example, what I want to do is I want to actually label every vertice along the pipeline too. So not only have the engineering measure values at every 500 feet, but also at every vertice. So I'm going to go ahead and add another symbol layer. And again, if I go and look at the properties of that symbol layer, I'll go ahead and use that same symbology, that sort of symbol with text. But this time what I'm going to do for the element itself is I'm going to pick a point symbol, and let's format that point symbol. What I'm going to do here is give it a fill, a solid white fill, and maybe give it a dark outline. And maybe make it a little smaller, maybe 8 point. Now what I'm doing for my position is I'm going to have that marker placement not along the line, but on vertices. So now we place that symbol right along the vertice. And again, if we go up under the appearance, and this time select on the text element, and I'll go ahead and change that text string. Again, use that expression, paste that in there. Oh, and don't forget to change that to measure. Verify that so it's valid, and I go and apply that. So there we go. So now, kind of pretty quickly, I've gone ahead and I've got symbology that allows me to label all my vertices with my engineering measure values, along with every 500 feet along the center line. And often what I'll do at this point is I'll actually remove the center line itself. That way I can just have the points and the text boxes, and I'll go ahead and overlay that on the polyline itself. Because remember, this isn't a label that you can necessarily turn it on and off. So in my full pipeline example, what I typically do is I have my engineering stationing routes. Let's zoom into that same area. And I just have that sort of polyline layer turned on. And if I want to turn on my engineering measures, I just go ahead and turn on that layer that contains that symbology with the point ticks along that pipeline. In this case, I've gone ahead and rotated the 500-foot marks 270 degrees, so they're offset from my vertice markers or my vertice labeling along the way. So pretty easy, simple way to use arcade scripting. And the nice thing about this is when I go ahead and publish this map out to my portal, that labeling comes along as well, because remember those arcade scripts are independent of Pro. They work in the portal as well, or ArcGIS Online. And also when I publish to my mobile devices. So here's an example of what this would look like in my mobile application, whether it be Explorer, Survey 123, or Collector, or even new field maps. They'll take advantage of all this labeling. So I hope you found this useful. I'll go ahead and post here to this URL a link to download my sample code so you can take advantage of it. And love to hear your feedback. If you had other examples, pass them my way, and we can share them with the rest of the community. Thanks, and thanks for tuning in.